Good day and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. In this video we're going to take a look at all of the classes and we're going to discuss how they do, or how I think they're going to do, or what the changes have been with the patch. So there's a patch coming out obviously for the release of the War Within pre-expansion content. With it is going to come a lot of changes, so basically we're going to take a look at those changes and discuss how they feel. We will be going through each class. I will try to timestamp it in the descriptions. Well, I mean, I will timestamp it, but sometimes I can be late to these things because, release the video, I have other stuff I'm working on. I also work a job, so... But basically, I'm going to do my best, make sure that the timestamps are up nice and early. And I have played each class, but only some classes to a high level. So, and when I say high level, I mean like heroic rating. Bit of Mythic Plus. So if there's anyone, especially from PvP, or if there's anyone who wants to comment on each class, that would be really awesome to see in the comments down below. So firstly, just an overview. Basically, talents that increase melee range have been removed. I guess this kind of makes sense. They did feel a little bit redundant. A lot of them were only doing very small changes. All fear, silence, sleep stun, and interrupt visual effects have been updated. I think this is really good. I've complained previously about the UI elements displaying like the actual effect that's going on, and I think these are very good steps in the right direction. Reduce the percentage granted by avoidance and leech rating by 50%. So this is very interesting. The reduction in leech and avoidance as mechanics is a little bit interesting. Not too certain why that is. I assume these things are going to be placed more into abilities, but we're going to have to see. So let's talk about Deathknights. So we'll start with Deathknights and then obviously move down. So all talent trees have obviously had their talents moved. Subduing Grasp is a new talent. When you pull an enemy, the damage they deal to you is reduced by 6% for 6 seconds. This seems a good way to pull high target elites, reduce some of their damage done, nothing too crazy. Osmosis, anti-magic shield increases healing received. That will increase your reliance on healers, but obviously does help to compensate for some of the loss of leech. Null magic, magic damage taken is reduced by 10%, and duration of harmful effects against you reduced by 35%. Seems a lot more PvP orientated. Vestigial Shell. Casting anti-magic shell grants 2 nearby allies a lesser anti-magic shell that absorbs magic damage and reduces the duration of harmful magic effects against them by 50%. This could be good for certain tanking situations. Potentially if you're looking to avoid some kind of high AoE, high damage effect, spread magic ability. Also feels somewhat okay for a PvP situation. Ice Prison, Chains of Ice now also root enemies for 4 seconds, but its cooldown is increased to 12 seconds. New talent, Runic Protection. Your chance to be critically struck is reduced by 3% and your armor is increased by 6%. This feels decent for tanking, but also doesn't feel super minimal. The reduction in critical strike is pretty cool. I think it still feels more PvP related. A 6% armor increase also feels somewhat decent. Anti-magic shell from Unyielding Will. Its cooldown is increased by 20 seconds, but it now also removes all harmful magic effects when activated. Higher cooldown, but a purge feels good, but obviously a trade-off. Something you're probably going to choose depending on the fight, or more than likely something you're going to choose depending on who you're facing in a duel or a PvP. Chains of Ice is now learned at level 13, was a talent. Anti-Magic Shell is now learned at level 14, was a talent. I think this is good. Anti-Magic Shell is something that's really good for all Deathknights to have. Making it not a talent and making it more pivotal to their gameplay I think is really important. Chains of Ice as well, also giving them some more spells and more control and just more reduction against magic damage. Rune of Stone Skin Gargoyle can now be rune forged from one-handed weapons. This is your stat buff rune, I believe. Abomination Limb no longer grants Bone Shield, Runic Corruption, or Rhyme based on specialization. So that's an interesting change. Ruin of Apocalypse has been updated. So the war effect Damage taken increased to 4%, but the duration is increased to 10 seconds. Pestilence effect, damage is increased by 500%. Famine effect, damage dealt to the caster reduced to 5%. And death effect, healing reduction increased to 5% was 1%. So this one is pretty interesting to me because Ruin of Apocalypse for me wasn't such a popular choice. It just didn't feel super impactful. It definitely feels like they're trying to change some of that aspect to it. I don't know if this is going to help it though engage in actual gameplay. Icebound Fortitude cooldown reduced by 60 seconds. I mean, this is good. Icebound Fortitude, reduce cooldown, more spam ability. Don't see anything too broken about it. Cleaving Strike now also retains bonus effects for being within your death and decay for 4 seconds when leaving its area. I think this is good. For those who don't know, when you stood in death and decay, your Cleaving Strike gained a bonus effect. To have that effect still retain itself even if you move is pretty helpful. Veteran of the Third War now grants 20% stamina, was 10%. Now 1 point talent was 2. So they've just kind of condensed into 1 to allow you to free up a point. That's pretty good. I think the same applies with Icy Talents here. I think that's also pretty good. Unholy Bond now increases the effectiveness of Runeforge effects by 20%. So these are just trying to trim down on lost talent points to free up more space. Assimilation now reduces the cooldown anti-magic zone by 30 seconds, no longer increases runic power when absorbing damage. I think this is just to make it more a reactionary defensive skill more than making it something people are trying to proc to increase damage. Suppression now grants an additional 6% damage reduction to area of effects when you suffer a loss of control. I don't think that's a huge change. Blunt Scent Leech increased to 5%. This is to compensate for the reduction in leech overall. Blood Draw now also grants a buff reducing damage taken by 10% and reducing Death Strike cost by 10 for 8 seconds when falling below 30%. This is actually pretty good. I think this change overall does give a lot more presence to Deathknights overall. I think it's not a bad decision. I think what it also does is it just makes it something that's something you probably don't mind taking and spending a point on, since you freed up a couple points higher up. Blood Draw proccing more often and being a nice kind of fallback spike when you fall below 30% health is pretty cool. Don't know if it's proccing fast enough to make it super duper solid. And the following talents have been removed. Most of the strikes, clinching, grasp, and power were Ruin Weapon, Ruin of Hysteria, and Might of Thracian. I think these weren't taken. I don't really see any of them being ones that I took personally a lot. So yeah. Blood. So Blood. DKs get a new talent, Bone Collector. When you would pull an enemy, generate 1 charge of Bone Shield. I think that's not bad. Ossified Vitriol, when you lose a Bone Shield charge, damage of your next Marrow Rend is increased by 15%, stacking up to 75. Really nice here. For me, pulling an enemy, generating 1 charge of Bone Shield, nice. I think the ability to pull Bone Shields and to gain stacks of Bone Shield faster is always good, because one of the problems you have, especially as a DK, is the speed in which you gain Bone Shields and create defensibility for yourself, and then you have a lot of problems. Ossified Vitriol, just a way to increase and spike damage, never really a problem. New talent, Carnage, Blood Drinker, and Consumption now contribute to your Mastery Blood Shield. Each time an enemy strikes your Blood Shield or cooldowns, Blood Drinker and Consumption have a chance to be reset. So Blood Drinker and Consumption are 2 abilities that weren't chosen a lot, very specified in situations. Them having the ability to have their cooldowns reduced makes them a lot easier to integrate into your rotation. Blood Drinker and Consumption were things that were kind of falling out of rotation abilities. It makes them difficult to use. lower cooldowns or ability to reset on cooldown means integrating them could be a lot easier. Bloody Blade, parrying an attack, grants you a charge of Bloody Blade, increasing your strength by up to 0.5, up to 4% for 15 seconds. At 8 stacks, your next parry consumes all charges to unleash a Heart Strike at 200% effectiveness and increases your strength by 10%. So this is very interesting because obviously now this is pushing you towards parry, parrying an attack, parry stats, parrying abilities. Wasn't such a huge thing for DKs, but with how this could work, could make it very interesting to look into a build that relies a lot more on parry, and to look into abilities that can proc more parry, so that you might be able to proc this more, because 200% effectiveness is really good, the strength increase is really good. I think overall it's really solid. Then we have Crimson Scourge. So Crimson Scourge is now learned at level 21, that's fine. Death's Caress now learned at level 23. Both of these were things that everyone was pretty much taking, so to just make them abilities I think is the right way to go, because they're very crucial to the rotation. Tightening Grasp now silences enemy for 3 seconds when they pulled, no longer increases damage enemies take from you when they pulled by Wolfien's Grasp. This is also fine to me, although the increased damage was good, especially for making DK tanks who already have some of the best abilities for grouping enemies, made them really strong. I think it's okay to remove some of that aspect and to give them silence rather, because I think it is better overall. Blood Drinker now reduces the damage the enemy deals to you by 20% while channeling, and for an additional 5 seconds after channeling it fully, now also generates the 20 additional runic power of its duration. So this is what I was talking about with Blood Drinker now falling into rotation a lot more. So Blood Drinker is a channel ability. Channel abilities didn't have a huge place in the DK rotation. With Blood Drinker having the ability to reproc its cooldown, giving you incentives for charging it, and also reducing the damage received by you while channeling, and giving you resource regeneration, it could be a good ability to use now at the end of runic power spend rotations to refill, to give yourself resource regeneration and maintain levels of damage reduction while you're waiting for runic power, runic charges to obviously restart your rotation. So it could be very good in those situations. Consumption now also causes your Blood Plague damage to occur 50% more quickly for 8 seconds. I think this is pretty good overall. Bone Storm no longer costs runic power, costs up to 10 Bone Shield charges and lasts 1 second for each charge consumed. Generates 1 Bone Shield charge every second while active. So this is interesting. Basically, you spend your charges to start getting them back. It's a very interesting kind of design. So if I get to 10 charges, I spend them, and over 10 seconds I'll gain 10 charges back. It's a very interesting process to make. So I think it's something very cool. Reinforced Bones now lets Bone Shield stack 2 additional times. So that's also good if you're going full out on the Bone Shield build. It increases both damage and also increases your tankiness. Heartbreaker's runic power per target hit increased to 2, was 1. Now a 1 point talent was 2. Also very good. Perseverance of the Ebon Blade's versatility bonus increases 6%. Red Thirst reduces cooldown of Vampiric Blood by 2 seconds. Shattering Bone is now 1 point talent. All of these, again, just saving on talent points because of hero talents, because of the changes overall. Now let's talk about Frost. So Frost, new talent, Shattered Frost. When the Frost Strike consumes 5 Razor Ice stacks, deals 65% of that damage dealt to nearby enemies. This deals reduced damage beyond 8 targets. So, looks interesting. Basically, what it could do is improve the AoE damage of Frost DKs, which, to be fair, was pretty decent, but now feels really solid with some more changes here. Cryogenic Chamber. Each time Frost Fever deals damage, 15% of the damage dealt is scattered into the next cast of Remorseless Winter up to 20 times. So again, Remorseless Winter, their big time AoE spell, this continues to help consolidate their AoE damage. Arctic Assault, consuming killing machine fires a glacial advance through your target. So again, we're talking penetration through straight line damage. So although they're very positional based for their AoE, Frost DKs are getting quite a nice little buff here. Smothering offense, your auto attack damage is increased by 10%. This amount is increased for each stack of icy talons you have, and can stack up to 2 additional times, which is really great. Icy Death Torrent, your auto attack critical strikes have a chance to send out a sleet of ice dealing frost magic to enemies in front of you, deals reduced damage beyond the 8 targets. Again, we're talking more AoE, more based off the auto strikes, something that's a bit more passive and able to be incorporated into your rotation without having to actively press a button or take a spell that you don't want. The Long Winter, while Pillar of Frost is active, your auto attack critical strikes increases duration by 2 seconds up to a maximum of 6 seconds. So this is interesting. Again, more passive, incorporating itself into your rotation more so than making you have to integrate a spell or ability encompassing other abilities and spells. Pillar of Frost is a very important spell for all Frost DKs, of course. So having your auto strike, critical strikes, increases duration is something that is helpful. Hyperphyrexia, your runic power spending abilities have a chance to deal 45% of the damage dealt over 4 seconds. Frost Scythe has been redesigned, a sweeping attack that strikes all enemies in front of you for frost damage. This attack always critically strikes, and critically strikes with Frost Scythe deal normal damage. Deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. Consuming Killing Machine reduces the cooldown of Frost Scythe by 1 second. Now has a 30-second cooldown, and Ruin cost is increased to 2, but was 1. So this is very interesting. A huge redesign, obviously, on Frost Scythe. So again, obviously, we're talking AoE redesigns here. Guarantee critical strikes, and critical strikes deal normal damage. Very strange. I think I'm reading this wrong. So I think the correct way is basically what it's saying is there's no effect to the normal critical damage that it does. So it's worded a bit strange, but I think that's what it's saying. Deals reduced damage beyond 5 targets. So if you hit 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, consuming Killing Machine reduces the cooldown by 1 second. Now it has a 30-second cooldown, and runic cost is increased to 2. So this is very interesting because, as we mentioned earlier, so consuming Killing Machine, so this is like quite a big thing. Killing Machine is a buff, basically, that Frost DK is kind of run off of, and the ability to choose and consume this. So now you have Arctic Assault, which looks like it's going to change your single target ability to be able to do significant AoE damage in a straight line. Then you have Frost Scythe, which is more cone-based / horizontal line-based, and it could be very interesting. Ice Cap has been redesigned, reduces Pillar of Frost cooldown by 15 seconds. Again, Pillar of Frost, super critical to any Frost DK build, so very important. Rhyme is now learned at level 21, was a talent. Breath of Sindragosa damage increased by 54%, and cost per second reduced to 17. Frost Strike damage increased, Obliterate damage increased, Howling Blast damage increased, Frost Fever damage increased, Remorseless Winter damage increased, Glacial Advance damage increased, Frost Scythe damage increased, Chill Streak damage increased, Frost Worm's Fury damage increased, Inexorable Assault damage increased, Enduring Strength increase, Frostwhelp's Aid increase, Shattering Blade increase, Pillar of Frost increase, Spending Rune no longer increases the strength bonus of Pillar of Frost. So now let's stop here. So obviously this is all straight buffs. And I think anyone who's played Frost DK will say that they need these buffs. They were not in a super competitive space. Some players could make them work. They weren't a top pick for rating or anything really. This is much needed. What's interesting though is Spending Runes no longer increases strength bonus per Pillar of Frost. So obviously they're backing the fact that these raw changes, like I said, Pillar of Frost is absolutely crucial to Frost DK and how it works. But these raw changes to like all the abilities they're obviously assuming will be enough to replace the bonus you would get from spending runes during Bonus of Frost. So I think that's very interesting. It's also interesting to your playstyle. Before, it was crucial to obviously expenditure of runic-based abilities during Pillar of Frost's activation. Now you have a lot of abilities to extend Pillar of Frost and to lower its cooldown. There we go, lots of disconnecting and reconnecting. But I think this is very interesting and very, very good. A very good change. It removes a little bit of your reliance on Pillar of Frost, meaning you can be a bit more flat in terms of damage, which I think is something some classes do need to be. It's always nice to have classes that do spike, but when you're spiking way too hard and your window to spike is way too small, I think that's what Frost DK was struggling with. Rage of the Frozen Champion's runic power generated from Howling Blast. This makes a bit of sense. Your reliance on runic power has gone down a little bit since a lot of your abilities are now auto striking, critical striking, relying on consuming Killing Machine. Reduction in cooldown, Pillar of Frost reduction's gone down. So this makes a little bit of sense. Killing Machine stacking in additional time also makes sense. You have a couple abilities now that are pending reliance on consumption of Killing Machine. Murderous Efficiency's chance to grant a rune reduced. So again, the lack of expenditure of runes during the course of Pillar of Frost, very, very different now. So your runic consumption doesn't need to be so high. And with all the buffs and pure damage, I do think they had some concerns about spammability. Chill Streak can now bounce off the Death Knight if a second enemy target isn't found. This is also just a really good change. Basically, in terms of enabling abilities to still function if you're not fighting 2, 3, 4, 5 enemies. Rune of Razor Ice now displays a debuff. That's good. Following talents have been removed: Fatal Fixation, Cold Blood Rage, Invigorating Freeze. None of which I think were none of which I think were super duper important. I don't remember anyone taking any of them too crazily. And then we come to Unholy. So I think because of the length of these videos, I might just do a section per class at this rate, because so now we have Unholy. So Unholy, very interestingly enough, so it has a new talent, Doomed Bidding. Consuming Sun Doom calls upon the Mages of the Dead to assist you for 8 seconds. Raise Abomination summons Abomination to attack nearby enemies, applying Festering Rune with its melee attacks, affecting only by enemies with Virulent Plague. 90-second cooldown replaces Army of the Dead. So Army of the Dead was obviously for quite a while has been quite a big spammable ability for Unholy. It seems like they're trying to lower the dependence on Army of the Dead and provide more ways to spread your plagues with multiple lower cooldown abilities that spread multiple different plagues. So Doomed Bidding, you get another assistant. Raise Abomination, you get a way to spread your plagues. Foul Infections, your diseases deal 10% more damage, 5% increased chance to critically strike. Just a good flat passive. Menacing Mages, your Mages of the Dead Shadow Bolt now fires a volley of Shadow Bolts. So this is to create some kind of ranged AoE from the Mages that you can now call. Feels okay. Don't really know where this will be super incorporated in. I mean, obviously it's great to have some kind of way to just deal with groups of enemies or further away enemies, but it'll be interesting to see. Festering Scythe, every 20 Festering Wounds you burst empowers Festering Strike to become Festering Scythe. Festering Scythe will sweep through enemies, dealing shadow damage and infecting them with 2 to 3 Festering Wounds. So this is good in a lot of ways, because one thing that a lot of Unholy players, especially new Unholy players, struggle with is the balance of festering runes and the balance of creating more festering runes and being able to rapidly replace festering runes to constantly keep up rotation to maximize damage. So Festering Scythe being an ability that will proc to enable you moments where you can really manifest high volumes of damage helps, or maybe like mid-tier levels of damage, helps with their damage flow. Like before, they would proc the burst, then kind of step down quite a bit, build, proc, step down, build, proc, step down. Festering Scythe allows them to proc, step down, step up a little bit, step down, step up a little bit, proc. So it's just interesting. Decomposition, Virulian Plague has a chance to probably flare up, dealing 50 to 100% of damage it dealt to the target over the last 4 seconds. When this effect triggers, the duration of your active minions are increased by 1 second, up to 3 seconds, 2-point talent. So this is interesting. It's a chance to flare up. It can double up your Virulian Plague damage, but it's more the ability to extend your active minion time. So basically it's a way that if you're minion managing, you could eke out an extra couple seconds, enabling you to possibly proc more Virulian Plague, more festering runes. It's an interesting one. I don't know the chance, doesn't state here directly. We'd have to see that in action a lot more, I think, and how it's going to manifest in raids. Epidemic now being learned, Outbreak now being learned, just good stuff. Both of those, like anytime they have you learning a spell instead of having to take a talent, where those talents, I don't want to say were crucial, but basically were necessary for your class, is something I think is very important. Sudden Doom has been redesigned. Your auto attacks have a 25% chance to make your next Death Coil or Epidemic cost 10 less runic power and critically strike. Additionally, your next Death Coil will burst 1 festering rune. So this is interesting. Your auto attacks 25% chance to make your next Death Coil or Epidemic cost 10 less runic power and critically strike. Additionally, your next Death Coil will burst 1 festering rune. So this, how can I say? Death Coil is a very important ability, but the incorporation of Death Coil into the rotation has historically been something that's difficult for newer players to Unholy. It always had a place in the rotation, but it's something that really skilled players have been able to master. I don't want to say that they needed to make it easier, but enabling a more incentive to reduce the runic power, increase the cost ability of it, and allow you to also increase your proccing chance is very important. When talented into Harbinger of Doom, Sudden Doom now displays activation overlay of images, which I think is very, very important. We are experiencing some technical difficulties here. Having a lot of connection issues. I think it's Battle.net though. When talented on Sudden Doom now displays activation overlay images separately, left and right for each attack. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, we are, yeah, there we go. Okay. I don't know what's happening. I assume it's Battle.net. Unholy Blight's been updated, so its passive ability, Dark Transformation, surrounds your ghoul with a vile swarm of insects for 6 seconds, stinging all nearby enemies, infecting them with Virulian Plague and an unholy disease that deals damage over 14 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. So this is interesting, basically allowing you a great way to spread Virulian Plague and an unholy disease that deals damage over 14 seconds, stacking up to 4 times. So just a good way to spread Virulian Plague. For people who don't know, you have 2 kind of debuffs you have to manage as an unholy. Virulian Plague, and you have to manage Festering Runes. Both technically do different things. Being able to manage those is very crucial, and so this provides you with another way to manage your application of Virulian Plague. Dark Transformation cooldown reduced. This procs more with Unholy Blight upstairs. Army of the Dead cooldown reduced. That's big. Apocalypse cooldown reduced. That's big. Apocalypse now always summons 4 ghouls regardless of wounds burst. And then we have damage reductions. So a lot of people will confuse damage reductions with like Unholy Decay being like nerfed. It's not such a direct nerf because a lot of these cooldowns are being slashed. Yeah, most of it's also because of talents, but a lot of them are being slashed, and a lot of them are being really incorporated because what they're trying to do is they're trying to remove the spike ability of Unholy and give it a more flat damage perception. So you'll see all these cooldown reductions, you'll see all of these ways to maintain, for example, incorporate Death Coil more, to be able to have your mages and your companions and your summons last longer, to be able to apply more bursting runes, to regenerate more festering runes, to apply more virulent plague. And the reason why this has been done is to manage that load. The reason they have to reduce the damage is because now, technically speaking, Unholy DKs have more uptime and have more ability to summon those units. So they have to reduce the damage slightly. Whether they've done it too much, I don't know. We'll have to see. Default damage increased by 200%. No longer increases mastery. That was interesting. Festamite now functions like Druid's Iron Fur, allowing multiple instances to overlap. I think that's good. Ebon Fever also affects Frost Fever and Blood Plague. I think that's good. The class set bonuses have been changed. I think, yeah, that's whatever. I think that's just because of the changes they've made. And the reduction in, Ghoulish Frenzy, improved Death Coil. And then they've removed these abilities which were never ever taken. So that's DKs, a very long breakdown of DKs, obviously in a lot of detail. I think Frost DKs are getting an absolutely fantastic rework. I really think they look really, really good, just on paper. I think they've had a lot of changes that benefit them. I think their DPS obviously has gone up. They've had a lot of raw changes. But I think their overall dependency on runic expenditure during Pillar of Frost and the ability to proc Pillar of Frost more often is really good for them. Blood Decay, I want to say, hasn't seen much change, actually. Like, they've seen change, definitely, to make them, I think, bring them on par with a lot of other tanks. Like, to bring them down slightly, but without absolutely shredding them. Some ways to do a bit more damage, ways to remove some of the squishiness they could feel in the very beginning instances of the fight. But overall, I'd probably say Blood Decay, considering it's an expansion rework / new expansion. I think overall Blood Decay has probably got off with very minimal changes. And then Unholy, I think the changes overall were good from a rotationary point of view, making a much more stable rotation and damage. I think the complexity of them wasn't hurt too much either. Unholy is one of those classes I think people like because they're not an easy class to learn. I don't think that's been hampered at all. But I think, they do have some good changes. I think they haven't been hampered in complexity. You still have to understand Festering Runes, Virulent Plague, when to proc. But I think they've created it so that if you don't miss your Master Spike window, you're not, going to do no damage. So yeah, that's DKs. Pretty cool overall. So yeah, I think I'm going to do a video per class because, yeah, these could take a while. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on DKs, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.